Hey, you! Before you watch this, pause the video and subscribe to SemiPro right now.
YouTube, what is going on? It's Ryan, back again with another video, and today we're talking about America's team. Or at least the team that seems to be America's team on the surface by what the media has it cracked out to be. The New Orleans Pelicans. On the surface, the Pelicans look like a one-man team. Or at least that's what ESPN would like you to think. They may want you to think that Zion is the only person on the floor, but this is not the case. This team is very good offensively. They're top 5 in points, rebounds, assists, field goal attempts, and three-point percentage. And on the contrary, they suck at defense, allowing the third most points in the NBA and being below average in almost every single defensive statistic. So essentially, the first team to 120 points is gonna win when the Pelicans are involved. New Orleans have found themselves in a three-way tie for the 9 seed with Sacramento and Portland, and need to separate themselves from the other two in order to force a playoff with Memphis. I'll admit, this team probably makes the best story for either the play-in game versus the Grizzlies or the first-round matchup versus the Lakers. The Zion versus Ja play-in games, and then if New Orleans does advance, then it's Anthony Davis versus his former team, and Lonzo, Josh Hart, and Brandon Ingram against their former team. It would certainly make for a great show. But how likely is it to happen? And who is carving the path for the Pelicans? I'd be remiss if I did not start with Zion. Zion was hurt for the majority of the season, but has met, if not exceeded, all expectations in his 19 games active. The Pelicans have gone 11-9 since Zion was activated in late January, and Zion was just flat out dominant. There was no hiccup in the transition period to the NBA game, and he averaged a casual 24-7 in just under 30 minutes per game. That's significantly more than the next highest scorer that plays under 30 minutes, Lou Williams, who averaged only 18.7 points. Zion can basically do whatever he wants on the basketball court. He's a bully inside, despite being only 6'6", and there's a legitimate argument for him being the most physical player in the entire NBA. He's top 12 in the NBA in PER, he gets to the line better than every non-center in the league other than Jimmy Butler, and can stretch the floor if need be, shooting 46% from outside. He doesn't do this very often, but he does it enough so that he's respectable. So let's take a large overview of Zion. He can get any shot off he wants on the interior by bullying the opponent. He's one of the most efficient players in the entire NBA. On the rare occasion he misses, it's likely he gets his own rebound. And if he still can't convert, he'll probably end up at the line. And if the paint gets too congested, he can step outside and knock down a shot to spread out the defense. This capability to be dominant wherever he wants is part of the reason why the Pelicans are on their best stretch of the season with him active. And more specifically, that might be because Zion's per 100 possession plus minus is 13.6 points higher than team average. If you aren't on the Zion hype train, please buy a ticket or you might regret it. Then there's Brandon Ingram. Contrary to popular belief, the Pelicans did have a team while Zion was hurt, and that team was led by Brandon Ingram. Ingram was a borderline all-star and played very well as the number 1 option, finally starting to live up to that number 2 overall potential that he had when he was drafted, averaging 24 points per game. And he's still a 20-point per game scorer, even being relegated to the second option with Zion back. His numbers look underwhelming compared to Zion, but that's just because Zion's stats are absurd and BI's are a little more realistic. He can knock down the outside shot and attempts them a lot more than Zion does, attempting over 6 per game. And he's a little more ball dominant, yet not a primary facilitator. Ingram is the type of player that halts the free-flowing ball movement of the Pelicans, but he's talented enough in order to make up for the decline in the ball movement, and it works because he shoots an efficient enough percentage. And the 2 guards that are typically around him are so unselfish that they make up for Ingram. Lonzo Ball and Jrue Holiday are those 2 guards. We all know what we're getting with Jrue Holiday. He's a non-ball dominant shooting guard who plays defense, and the guy he will throw at opposing team's best player. He's essentially slightly above average at everything, which makes him a very good asset, especially serving as a veteran piece for a team like New Orleans. He can knock down a shot, he's an effective passer, he doesn't turn the ball over, and he's a strong defender. It seems like New Orleans has been trying to package him away in a trade for quite some time, but I don't agree with that move. I understand he has a large contract, but this team is full of guys on rookie deals, so one big contract, at least for now, isn't too detrimental. And not everyone can be young. You need a veteran presence to lead the team in at least some capacity, and despite the Pelicans' best efforts to get rid of him, Holiday is one of the most conducive players on this team for team success, with one of the highest plus-minuses on the roster. Then there's Lonzo. He's molded his game from needing the ball in his hand to facilitate to actually being a very capable off-the-ball type of guard. The wacky jump shot that looked to be a liability to start his career is now an asset, as he shoots the most threes per game on one of the most consistent three-point shooting teams in the league, knocking down 38% of them from downtown, with a lot of these coming from the catch-and-shoot variety, as he's allowed Ingram to do most of the primary ball handling. He's just as effective passing the basketball, but he does it in a different way than we've been accustomed to seeing from him. Not to mention that as someone who came into the league as a defensive liability, Lonzo has grown tremendously in that aspect, becoming one of the league's best off-the-ball defenders, surprisingly forming a strong defensive backcourt with himself and Holiday, despite the fact that the team's defensive stats don't back it up. Derek Favors is the final starter, and he fits in the same line as Drew Holiday. He's a veteran that doesn't really fit the young team mantra that the Pelicans have, but he's productive, and he helps the team win. He'll get you extra possessions, grab you rebounds, and he makes the select few shots he takes per game. JJ Redick is another one of those veterans. He also fills the culture of this team, contrary to someone like Favors or Holiday, who it seems like New Orleans is trying to get rid of, or at least doesn't fully embrace. Redick is the opposite. He shoots 6.5 threes per game and makes 45% of those shots. That's what he is. He's a sharpshooter through and through. If you need someone to space out the floor, JJ Redick is probably the most ideal player in the NBA for consistently knocking down an outside shot. Josh Hart serves as the sixth man on this team, and he fits the theme of being a high-volume three-point shooter, but he doesn't really put up a lot of shots, just the large majority of his shots are from outside, and the advanced metrics don't really love him either, but he fits the culture of being a high-volume shooter, as well as being young and growing, and he's still developing into his own. The rest of the rotation is rounded out by E'Twaun Moore, Frank Jackson, Jackson Hayes, and Nicolo Melli. They all fill out the roster in different ways, and they all have their strengths and flaws, but they aren't really as noteworthy as the other players in the rotation, and a few of them might even be cut out of the rotation entirely due to the playoff format and due to Alvin Gentry trying to shorten up his bench. Ultimately, I think the Pelicans are one of the most fun teams that are seamlessly transitioning into the modern NBA, shooting the ball at such a high capacity at an incredibly high efficiency. They have a lot of momentum going into the new season and have probably the best chance of any team that isn't in the playoff picture right now who can find their way into the postseason.